welcome again to so we're doing a 4-part series on team discovery. So this is the second session that will be focusing on team types. So we will have, again, really looking into team discovery, but with a bit more of that focus on what are team types, how do we find that all out, and what does it mean? So please feel free to, I will be asking some questions, so feel free to use the chat feature, add in your answers, add in any questions. It's really an open forum. We want you to be able to sort of have conversations and get those discussions going. So just a little bit of a recap from last week. So when we look at team discovery, we're looking at the team wheel that has 4 key quadrants. And just to refresh, we've got the top right quadrant is that innovation and agility quadrant. The bottom right is that results and discipline quadrant. Bottom left is process and precision. And then top left is teamwork and employee experience. So based on the results of your behavioural assessment or the results of a person's behavioural assessment, they're plotted into one of these 4 quadrants to do with the behavioural pattern results. So we actually get to find out where do they sit and what that all means, which we did dig into a little bit last week in terms of if you sit in the innovation and agility quadrant, what happens then? If you sit in the process and precision quadrant, what about now? But today we'll be looking more from that team perspective and what it means as a team when you're situated across maybe multiple quadrants, all in one quadrant. How do you work together best? So I always get asked the question, why should we use team discovery? When's the ideal situation to use it? Lots of clients always ask that. And I just thought it'd be good to talk through some different situations that you can actually utilize team discovery, because it's really a tool that can be used multiple times throughout the year, I would say. It's not something that you only use once a year. It's something that you can actually reference monthly, weekly. It's a really, really useful tool. And some situations that I've put up is you could be having a new team member joining, for example. So maybe you want to see, how does this new team member fit in with your existing team? Are their strengths similar? Are their gap areas the same? Are they actually different? Are they filling in someone else's gap areas? Start to explore what the new team dynamics are going to be with this person. You could also look at it from the perspective of, I just want to understand better an existing team that I have. I want to understand how they work together. What does that mean for them? Where do I need to provide them additional support? You could be looking at it from the perspective of a team has a new project that they need to complete, or maybe a new set of objectives, and start to link that with team discovery, again, to identify the strength areas that this team will have in terms of achieving those objectives, any gap areas that we need to be aware of, maybe even identify who would be a good leader in this team to actually action this project, whereas it may be in their comfort areas, whereas maybe for others, it's a little bit more of a stretch, starting to identify that. You could be looking at it from a perspective of that you're scaling the business, scaling a team. Maybe you've got a team of 10 and you want to grow to a team of 20. Okay, who are the 10 people that we have? Who do we need? What are our objectives going to be for these new people joining? Where do they actually need to be plotted in this wheel? Maybe you want to promote some team transparency. So you actually want to maybe do a little bit of a team session, maybe have that conversation with your team members and talk them through the results and what it means, really having that honest conversation. And finally, I've got even building leadership capabilities. So a lot of the times we see clients who put manager teams through team discovery, executive teams. It's really great from that perspective as well. And feel free if there's any other reasons that any of you on the call today have used team discovery, more than welcome to add it in the chat for us to talk through. But when we go into the software, and I thought it was just quickly good to show you what it looks like in case any of you haven't used Team Discovery before, but Team Discovery lives within the design module of PI, and you can find that the top left-hand side. If you click on design, it will take you to Team Discovery. You do have to have teams available in order to use that. So definitely feel free to reach out to us if you don't have a team available and we can help you with that. But let's just say you need to create a team or you have an existing team, really easy to just click on the buttons. But if we were to look at this sales team and resume the team discovery, it would redirect us to this page where we can actually see where everyone is plotted in the quadrants. We can actually edit our team members. So there's a little marker tool next to the team name where we can change and edit people and see where they will be in the wheel. The one step further from that, so obviously last week we sort of learned how people are plotted and we understand sort of the formation, but let's look at the team types. And so in the system, you can actually click on next team type and you can find out the type of team that you have. So for example, in this, we've got a producing team. So this is all system generated. So like I said, it's really easy. You just click on the buttons and it will produce these results. But really the purpose of today is to understand, okay, how do we get more information from the team type that we've uncovered? So PI have done, like I mentioned, lots and lots of studies, and they actually looked at 127,000 employees across 22,000 teams, and they were able to find evidence of 9 distinct team types. So it's really crazy to think about. We go from 127 employees, 22,000 teams, but there are 9 distinct team types, and they actually didn't find evidence of any more than that. So it really thins it down in terms of the type of groups that we can potentially have working in our business. Here are all the 9 team types. So some of you might be familiar with some of them. You might be a part of one of these teams or know an existing team. But each team has its own name and its own icon that associates with it. So we've got exploring, bolstering, cultivating, anchoring, stabilizing, executing, producing, pathfinding, and adapting. And I'm sure when you start to hear those names, you might be able to link up some reference profiles or some behavioral patterns that might go along with those team types. I know that when I look at adapting, I'm thinking of the adapter profile and how they've got the ability to flex and change. So again, we could assume that an adapting team, probably we've got people across all 4 quadrants that can do a little bit of everything. I love the exploring team icon. It's got the rocket going upwards. So that sort of hints that maybe we're looking at the innovation and agility quadrant there, because they love to think of new ideas and really push the envelope on what can be done. But these are the 9 main team types. We'll be focusing on 2 in particular today. Obviously, it's a little bit, it's a lot to go through all 9, but definitely, like I mentioned, you can always reach out to me if you want to talk through a specific team type that you have that we won't go through today. So why is it so important that we actually understand the formation of a team, that we actually uncover their team type? Really, we want to understand 3 key areas. We want to find out, how will this team communicate with each other? How will they make decisions? So how will they approach decision making? And then how will they take action? These are really the 3 core functions of any team and of any group working together. So specifically, when we're looking at that communication piece, do we have a group that is quite sociable, really open to sharing their ideas? Maybe they're quite visionary and inspiring. They constantly have new ways of doing things and bring forward new product ideas, new service offerings. Or do we have a group that is a little bit more reserved? Maybe they're a little bit more factual in the way that they talk. Maybe they prefer to go through the data and the evidence and have that understanding when they communicate. They're super to the point when they have conversations. Maybe they don't break off the agenda. They know how to stay on topic. And again, looking at, do we have a team that maybe communicates too little? We can also identify that from the team type. Are they at risk of maybe not communicating enough with each other? Or do we have a team that's, really going to always be off agenda maybe and easily get distracted? How do we keep them on track? When we're looking at decision making, again, we might have a group that is really quick to make a decision. So maybe they're quite comfortable with risk, that A over D factor combination. For them, a new opportunity is really exciting. So they will lean into starting it off really quickly. Or we might have a group that's a little bit more hesitant, that's a little bit more foot on the brakes. Let's actually go through the information first, make sure that the decision that we're making is the right one. And again, when we're looking at that factor combinations piece, do we have a team that is more task orientated or more people orientated? Are they going to make their decisions based on people, how it might impact others in terms of your customers, your clients, how it might actually impact the team or other teams within the departments? Or are they purely looking at it from that task perspective? What's the most efficient way to get something done? And then finally, that taking action. So that sort of links up with decision making. Like I mentioned, that comfort with risk is really important to understand, especially if you might have a group that you've got people who sit on both sides of the fence when it comes to that. You might have people who are really quick to make decisions and others that are a little bit slower. Working together, if they don't have that understanding of each other, that might actually bring forward a little bit of tension, a little bit of conflict. Definitely heard times where people who need instances where they need to just go through the facts when people make decisions quickly sort of irritates them when they need to give an answer quickly because they actually want to just make sure that everything is right, and vice versa. People who are waiting on a decision from another team member but don't understand it's because they're just evaluating and making sure that it's the correct one to make. So all of this information is really crucial when we're starting to look at that formation of the team, and we can identify a lot of this from team types. We could have a team that we've never met in person before, but purely looking at their behavioral results, putting them in the team discovery wheel, and then getting their team type can actually give you information on all of these three key areas. This is really where the gold is, I would say, in team discovery. So if we were to look at those 19 types and sort of where they sit on that team discovery wheel, this would be sort of approximately where each team type would be situated. So sort of like what I mentioned before, the adapting team would be right in the middle because they'd probably have people who sit across all four quadrants. You can see top left, we've got that cultivating team. So if you had majority of people who sat in the teamwork and employee experience quadrant, they'll probably be a cultivating team. If you had a lot of people that sat the bottom half of the wheel, so cross process and precision and results and discipline, they might be an executing team. But I just thought it was a good visual just to see where the team types exist on the team discovery wheel. So now we get to the fun bit. We get to actually look at a specific team type and go through it in a little bit more detail. So here I've got an example of a team. So we've got 5 people in this team. And as you can see, they all sit in the bottom half of the wheel. So even from last week's session, we know that people that sit in the bottom half of the wheel are D over B, so they're going to be more formal in nature. So we're probably looking at people that have a lower extroversion drive, a lower B drive, and we're going to identify what team type they have now. So they would come back if we would put them in team discovery as an executing team. And that is because they've got team members who primarily fall within the process and precision quadrant and the results and discipline quadrant. So they're an executing team. And if we were to look at just some words that might relate to an executing team, they're going to be quite disciplined. So they're really going to be focused on process, conscientious in the way that they do their work, and quite professional. So they're going to be really on the detail and making sure that things are being done correctly and to a high quality standard. So again, we can start to now identify, okay, what are the strengths and the caution areas that might come out from an executing team? And I thought I might throw it out to you all if anyone wants to have a guess maybe in the chat. What might be some strengths of this group? So we've got a team bottom half of the wheel across those 2 quadrants. Again, when you think of the words, results, process, I might start to give you some hints on what might be the strengths of this team. I'll give everyone a little bit of a second to pop maybe some of their answers in the chat before I share mine. What do we think might be some strengths? Any guesses, anyone? So I've got here, they might have a clear focus on getting the work done. So really having that eye on the finish line. Always looking to improve efficiencies, and that would really be a heavy focus on improving efficiencies for current products or current services, since they're in that bottom half of the wheel, and making sure that they deliver high quality work at all times. So these people probably have a high formality drive and will really be focused on accuracy. So these are some of the strengths that might come out of an executing team. Anyone want to take a guess on what might be some caution areas if we had a team that just sat at the bottom half of this wheel? So we've only got our team members, these 5 people, gone through their strengths. They're going to get the work done quickly, make sure that they're efficient and organized, high quality. But what might be some caution areas? And even if you were to think back on what we went through last week about the what it means to sit in innovation and agility, or the teamwork and the employee experience quadrant, what might that be? Sarah, yes. Do we have a question in the chat that we just wanted to go through?
We have some contribution to the question that you've asked. We've got Lee saying weak on innovation and change. Rachel speaking about bring the team along with the strategy. Pace might be slower from Chan, and Kat, their flexibility and adaptability to change might be impeded there as well.
Yeah, and those are all correct in terms of the responses that you've given. I've got here, they may allocate resources to current products or current services rather than something new, and their unwavering focus to get the job done may lead to burnout over time, and that's really does go into even what everyone has mentioned. Definitely their flexibility and their adaptability is going to be a bit slower. They might be a team that's really process driven and able to do that implementation of long-term tasks. So they might be a bit more inclined to focus on one thing at a time and get that done right, rather than focusing on multiple different projects all at once or different tasks all at once. So that's, yeah, all really good responses there in terms of the strengths and the caution areas. When we link that back now to the 3 areas that I spoke about earlier, so how are they going to communicate, how are they going to make decisions, and how are they going to take action? Does anyone want to again put in the chat how they think this team might communicate? So we've got a team who probably have a lower B extroversion drive. They're more informal in nature. And if anyone has experience of maybe working in a team like this in the past, please feel free to add in your answers. How do we think they're going to communicate with each other? Conscious that they don't have anybody who sits in the top half of the wheel. So they don't have anyone in teamwork and innovation. And that's typically, you will find your higher extroversion drive people. So we have a whole team who have a slightly lower extroversion drive. Yeah, Giovanni, yeah, very efficient. So it's going to be to the point and succinct. They're not going to go off topic. That's 100%. Lee's put would be polite, yeah, and really like to think before they say something. 100%. They're going to want to have that time to actually think things through before they give an opinion. So giving them that space is important. But obviously, when we've got a whole team like that, it's also making sure that when we're in that environment where they do need to collaborate and they do need to communicate, that they are feeling comfortable to bring forward their ideas. I would say that their conversations would be quite factual and data driven. And that's even how they might resolve conflict as well. So they're always going to lean into the information, you know, what facts are on hand, what research do I need to double check and bring forward. Their conversations will be really factual, and their exchanges of resources and the way that they'll communicate with each other will be done quite formally, probably within an established process. Their meetings will follow an agenda really tight. They will not go off it. But I think everyone's really put in some good information there. Yeah, definitely we'll have well-documented meetings and good follow through. I would agree with that, Kat, that you've added in there as well. In terms of decision making, what do we think here with this executing team? Are they going to be quick to make decisions? Are they going to take risks, do we think, sitting in that bottom half of the wheel? Or do they maybe need a little bit more information? What's everyone's thoughts on how this team might make decisions? And I really like what Sarah's put in the chat. What does decision making look like for this team? Not quick to make decisions. Yep, a little bit slow, a bit more risk adverse. I definitely would say that as well. So this team would really need to understand the why. And if you're a person who is an outsider in this team and you're coming in, either working with them or trying to introduce something new, you will really have to make sure that you come prepared with all the data and the evidence, because that's how they like to make their decisions, and that you actually give them the time to understand why this change needs to be implemented and actually put it as part of their process. So that will be really important. And again, linking up their decisions will focus more on improving what currently exists. And there will need to be a little bit of a clear understanding of who needs to be involved in what and how are decisions made. So that clarity with a high formality drive team is really important. Definitely will have efficient implementation though. That's right there, Giovanni. This group will be able to see things through into the long term. I would call them change implementers. So they will work well with your change initiators. So if you had a team who came up with the idea and started to put the balls in motion, they could pass it on to this team, and this executing team would be able to see it out into the long term. Finally, in terms of taking action, I know we've sort of talked it through a little bit in our answers already, but it might be a little bit more individual in the sense that we don't have a group with a high A dominance drive. I would say they're probably a little bit more, the low dominance drive, they're probably a little bit more on the higher side. So they might feel more comfortable making decisions independently as well, or maybe not having a lot of team consensus, which might mean that we have people working a little bit solo rather than as a team. And work to be done will really be no nonsense. We would call an executing team a no nonsense type of group because they're really disciplined and professional in the way that they work and moving things ahead. What might happen, do you think, if we've got this executing team? Most individuals probably have a higher dominance drive. Sometimes team cohesion might drop, that team collaboration. What might happen if people aren't communicating with each other in this group properly, or they're not collaborating with each other? What might they struggle with there? Any thoughts that you just wanted to pop up in the chat in terms of if we have a group that's maybe not focused as much on that communication and collaboration and working a little bit individually? Yep. Chan, yep. They might be working in silos. Yes, so forget to actually come back as a group and share their thoughts and ideas, or what's going on, what progress have they made, for sure. Yep. So it might be important that there are some team meetings set or some opportunities to talk through work that's been done. 100%. No, that's great. Now, I've also got just some self-reflection questions that you could actually ask this type of team. And this might be relevant for some of you if you work in an executing team or if you have an executing team in your business. But when we're looking at these self-reflection questions, you might want to ask around, do we have a method for handling disagreements on the team besides pulling rank? If we were to need help, do we have a strong network with other teams or stakeholders that we could rely upon? Do we take time to acknowledge the individuals who make up our team? So again, looking at it from that team cohesion perspective. And is our team seen as a constructive team player, or are we viewed sometimes as being a little bit stubborn in terms of, maybe those silos, like we mentioned, or the way that people are working individually? Are they being viewed as a team that's open to collaboration, even with other departments as well? So these are just some really good self-reflection questions that you could ask an executing team, or ask yourself if you find that you would be this type of team type if you were to be put through team discovery with the rest of your team members. But just some really good self-reflection questions there. I might just give a second if anyone has any questions to do with this type of team type, with an executing team that they wanted to talk through just before we move on to our second team type. Yes, and thanks for adding that, Sarah. Definitely these self-reflection questions are a really good way to help challenge that growth mindset and ensure that the team is focusing on the strengths and the opportunities areas. So how can we keep pushing them to work more efficiently together and to really strengthen the group as a whole? Alrighty, I'll let, if anyone has any questions, again, feel free to pop them in, but I'll move on to our next team. So here we've got a little bit of a different group. You can see the team formation here has changed. So we've got people that sit in the innovation and agility quadrant. So here from last week, we know that these will be your A over C factor combination people. So they're going to be quite proactive, quite driven, have that higher sociable drive. We've also got some people in that results and discipline quadrant. So they too will have that A over C factor combination, be quite driven, but maybe a little bit more focus on detail. And then we've just got one team member who sits in that teamwork and employee experience quadrant. So looking at this team as a whole, if we were to put them through team discovery, they would come back as a pathfinding team. So this would be the team type that would be given to them. And that's because majority of the people fall between the innovation and agility quadrant and the results and discipline quadrant. So they'd come out as a pathfinding team. So some words that can be associated with a pathfinding team is they're going to be really fast paced. So they're going to move quickly. So we can already see the differences between an executing team. Really goal orientated. So again, have strong focus on objectives, on goals, what's the future strategic plan, and maybe have a little bit more of that competitive side to them, or that willingness to really push things a little bit further and push the boundaries on certain tasks or projects. Again, I'll throw it out to everyone. What strengths do we think might come from a team that is a pathfinding team? So here we've probably got people, again, who have a high dominance drive. We might have some people that also have a high extroversion drive. We've got that proactive factor combination going on. What might be some strengths of this group? And again, you might just want to pull on your PI knowledge. I know that we went through some reference profiles that might sit up in that innovation agility. We had captain and persuader. Any strength areas? Chan, relentless in driving change. I really like that one. They will be pretty relentless. Yeah, quite driven. Would welcome change and risk. So yeah, you're going to have a group here who's a little bit more open to taking risk and maybe making decisions a little bit quicker when it comes to the new opportunities, and quick decision making. 100%. You're going to have a team that's really focused on moving forward. So quite innovative and agile, we would say. So a lot of ideas will probably get formulated within this group, sharing of ideas, getting each other's perspectives and seeing how things can be done better. Like I mentioned, a really driven and proactive group. So probably going to move really quickly and make sure that the job still gets done right. And that would link in a bit with the people that sit in that results and discipline quadrant. They're going to make sure that things are being done correctly. Any thoughts on what might be the caution areas for this group? So we've got this pathfinding team. We've got some great strengths. They're really driven, goal orientated. What might be a caution area of some of that? Let's say if they were to lean into some of these strengths, what caution areas might arise? Again, I'll give everyone a second to put in some details. Yep, Leah, I really like that. They might miss some details because they're going too quickly. Definitely you might have a little bit of a less detail orientated team, so little things might slip through. I like that, Giovanni. Yeah, different. You're going to have big personalities in this group. Yes, definitely a lot of people feeling comfortable to share their opinions, and with that would come a lot of conversation. So definitely managing that would be important. So I've got here a little bit of possible tension between your innovative, so people who sit in that innovation and agility quadrant, and those who are a little bit more process driven. So you might have some differing opinions at times, that some people might be pushing for a new approach, a new strategy to be implemented, but then you've got some other team members that might also be focused on the current systems. So there could be a little bit of tension in the group there. And that miscommunication, I think a lot of people have mentioned that this pathfinding team is going to have pace to them. They're going to move quickly. Miscommunication may occur just because things are just moving at such a rapid pace. There may be some details that get left behind. So I really love, thank you everyone for popping in those answers. So again, looking at it from that perspective of how this team's going to communicate, how they're going to make decisions, and how they're going to take action, sort of did just mention that there may be some miscommunication because they're working quickly, but in general, how do we think this team would communicate and speak to each other? Do we think they're going to be pretty open with their ideas and feel comfortable sharing their thoughts? Do they need time to process before they give an opinion? How do we think this pathfinding team would communicate? Again, like we mentioned, we've got people who've got that high dominance drive. We're going to have some team members with that high extroversion drive, innovation, agility, teamwork, people that are going to be quite social, like the open to talk, but maybe sometimes not necessarily to listen. Yep, because we've got a lot of people sitting in that innovation and agility quadrant. That's right. We're going to have to be conscious that we're listening to each other. We're taking the time to process what each person is saying. I really like that, Giovanni. I've got here, there's going to be a lot of healthy conflict within the team if it's managed well, because there will be people challenging each other. There will be a lot of ideas being formulated and being spoken through. So some heavy conflict, healthy conflicts there that just needs to be managed effectively. And conversations will be really productive. So they will be focused on what can be done to achieve strategy, to achieve the objectives on hand, and how to ensure that we can best serve, your customers, your clients. That would be really important. And I like what some people have put here too. It's going to be big picture thinking, definitely. Their communication isn't going to be necessarily on the small details. It's going to be on the big picture item. How can we improve? How can we be better at our offering? In terms of making decisions with this team, how do we think they might go about making decisions as a group? Do we think that they're going to be quite collaborative in that sense? Are they going to be more inclined to make decisions independently and then come back and tell the group that they've made that decision? What do we think that might happen here? Let everyone take a moment to think. I know I'm asking some tough questions. But I've got here that people will have a little bit more comfort in the autonomy to make their own decisions. When we've got people with that high dominance drive, they don't necessarily have to have team consensus. In the sense of that they have to have everyone agree on the decision that needs to be made. They're actually going to feel quite comfortable and confident making their own autonomous decisions. And definitely there still will be that lens, people lens in terms of how might this affect others, how's it going to affect our customers, how will they react to this information. So definitely having that in the back of their minds in terms of when they are making decisions. I like what Giovanni's put, they've done it already. Yeah, they're going to be so quick to make that decision. They've already moved forward, and maybe we've already gone past that point. So I really like what you put in there. And in terms of the taking action, again, linking up to all these things that everyone's put in the chat and what we've been mentioning, they're going to be really fast paced, have already going ahead and doing it. So you're not going to have a group that is responsive in nature, that needs to be told that they need to do something. They're already, I would say, 1-2 steps ahead. They're already thinking, how can we get this new thing done? What needs to be done for the team? What needs to be done for our customers? How can we keep things moving? So really have that strong focus. And speed will be something that you will see in this team, maybe a little bit over the coordination of tasks between each other and as a team on who's doing what. There might be a little bit more of that autonomous nature being shown, people taking the lead on their own tasks and working quickly. So like we mentioned before, because we've got quite a few high dominance drive people in this team, miscommunication could be an issue because everyone's working quickly. How would you combat this, if you were the manager of this team, what maybe what would you put in place to help combat any miscommunication due to the fact that people are working really quickly? What are some ideas here in terms of how that you can sort of combat that? Yep, regular team meetings, or maybe team meetings that are really focused in on work that has been done, work that needs to be done. So maybe that update, that pulse check to make sure we all know what everyone's been working on, maybe where a bit of support can be provided if needed, definitely. Yep, a clear agenda might also be important just to make sure that we're staying on track on what we need to discuss. We're not actually going off topic and maybe going down another path in terms of another idea or another opportunity, really staying focused on a clear agenda on what needs to be discussed in that particular meeting. And really, yes, I like what you've put down there. A bit of documentation is really good for this group. So writing down any decisions, any conversation points, and sharing that with all the team members to keep them in the loop. I think that's a really good one there. This team will probably need a little bit more of that structure at times. So documenting it and being able to provide that information back would just help them retain and understand what was spoken about. As you can imagine, a team that moves so quickly, lots of ideas, sometimes things can get forgotten. So that having that to reflect back on is really handy. So again, we've just got some self-reflection questions that you could ask yourself if you find that you're in this team type, or you can ask the group. If a large portion of the team was to be left or reassigned, could the team still function? Do we know the roles and responsibilities of each person in the team and how we all work together? Do people look out for each other and have the time to actually help one another? So is that something that could be worked on a little bit? Is everyone working more individually rather than as a team, or maybe just putting the hand up to say, hey, if you need something, feel free to reach out to me? So that might be another important question to ask. And if the demands of the team were to grow or were to change, would the way that the current team is working scale well? If we've got a team who is really fast paced, then we add on new tasks, new items that they need to complete. Would that lead to burnout purely because they will want to action those items as quickly as they can? They'll want to move on to the next. Do we have that possibility of burnout? How could we combat that? Put strategies in place to be able to identify burnout either within the team or with individuals, and have that sort of that safety to have those conversations as a group if people do feel that the workload is getting too much. So again, some really good reflection questions there that you can ask a pathfinding team. So that's pretty much everything from me today. We've been able to go through the different team types. We know that there's 9. We've dug into a little bit deeper 2 specific team types, the executing and the pathfinding team. But really, when we're putting teams through the discovery function and we're trying to understand their formation, we want to be asking those questions around how they're communicating, how are they making decisions, and how will they take action. Those are the 3 key areas that you want to be focusing on when you're putting a team through team discovery and getting their team type, having that understanding to be able to support them to work more effectively together and to grow the team's awareness of each other. Like I mentioned, you might have some people who are a little bit different, who work differently. Again, opening those conversations just provides that level of understanding. If anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat now, and I can quickly answer them. Otherwise, my email's up here. If anyone would like to go through a specific team that they have and get a bit more information and, dig into it a little bit deeper, feel free to email me. More than happy to book in a time slot in my diary. We can walk it through together and really explore it a little bit more. But yeah, thank you everyone. Really appreciate your input today.